Zach, you know what I haven't paid for in about 2.5 months? I've paid my taxes. I've paid my grocery, my electric bills, my sewer bills. I have not paid for
snow cones.
gasoline. Yeah.
I also don't think you've bought snow cones recently.
I miss snow cones, yeah. No, so I have not paid for gasoline in about 2.5 months, and although I do have a car payment, I'm saving about $150 a month on fuel. And you know what that means? The break-even point for the extra money I paid to drive around this wonderful Hyundai Ioniq 5, the break-even point is getting ever closer as gas prices stay high. Now, do I want gas prices to stay high for the millions of combustion drivers out there? No, because it is breaking hundreds of millions. It's breaking the bank. We still have a Subaru Forester. I feel the pain. But honestly, as gas prices stay high, the case gets stronger and stronger for an electric vehicle.
I've had multiple peers of mine come up to me and say, should I be selling my car and buying an EV because I don't like spending $250 a month on gas? And I'm like, you know what? That's a really interesting question. Let's make a video about it. So you actually ran the numbers for some pretty, common comparisons to figure out what would the break even be now that we're at $5 a gallon gas, right?
Yes. Now, when I first ran the numbers, gas was way back at $4.25 a gallon. Feels like so long ago. But it's amazing how as gas prices on a nationwide average have soared past $5 a gallon, we've seen the break-even point go down by
for electric vehicles,
6 months to as much as a year less time required to break even when looking at the added upfront cost of an electric vehicle over a combustion counterpart. Higher gas prices are just making the case stronger.
Yeah, so let's run through some of the numbers. Like, obviously, Tesla sells the most vehicles, those electric vehicles in the United States. The Model Y, very popular amongst folks. Like, give us an example here of the break-even time versus internal combustion, equivalent, Model Y comparison, for example.
So the three big things that matter when looking at EV break-even times: the price difference between the electric vehicle and whatever other vehicles you are considering that are combustion.
Because they're typically more expensive,
yes.
Like $11,000.
Yeah, $11,000 on average. And it just so happens with the Tesla Model Y, it's about $11,000 more expensive than some of its competitors within the class. You're also going to be looking at how many miles you drive annually on average. So these numbers are calculated with 15,000 miles driven annually, which is about the average American's driving habits. And then in addition, does it qualify for incentives? Because we know we've got a $7,500 federal EV tax credit, not to mention state incentives, but these numbers are calculated with and without the federal EV tax credit. So the Tesla Model Y, let's say you're shopping around and you're considering the BMW X4. It's a hot-selling BMW. Maintenance is quite expensive, but
definitely.
It's a pretty close comparison within the class. Of course, it's combustion-driven. The BMW X4 sells for $51,800 MSRP. Tesla Model Y has now stepped up to nearly $65,000. But because of the vast differences in efficiency and fuel economy, not to mention you're paying for electricity with a Tesla, which is a lot cheaper than gasoline, you're looking at 24 miles per gallon in the BMW X4 versus like 120 mile per gallon equivalent in the Model Y. Driving,
all right, I see it.
Even though incentives no longer apply for Tesla when it comes to the federal EV tax credit, the break-even time is just 4 years if you drive 15,000 miles a year. Now, you may be saying, 4 years, that's a long time. 4 years after that, it's nothing but savings.
Yeah.
Let's talk
incredible.
about the F-150 Lightning, though, because that's a little bit of a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, when you think F-150 Lightning, when you think dealers, when you think Ford dealers, what comes to mind? Is it the affordability or is it something else?
Markups.
So here's where the numbers get a little tricky because Tesla, they sell direct to consumer. There's no haggling. There's no markups. Sure, they raise the price whenever they feel like it. But the price you see on Tesla.com is the price you get. With the Ford F-150 Lightning, it's not so straightforward. We're going to talk MSRPs because we know with Ford Model E, there's the possibility that there will be the end to F-150 Lightning markups at some point in the future. But for right now, let's just pretend that future is already here.
Yep.
Most Lightning buyers are going to be looking at the Platinum or Lariat trims because that's where you get all of the features that most truck buyers want. It's not cheap. The F-150 Lightning Platinum is $90,874.
That's a tough pill to swallow, man. I know you're about to explain to me how over X number of years I'm going to break it. That is $90,000.
The situation, the numbers here, it's kind of gloomy. The numbers don't work out as well with the F-150 Lightning Platinum. So $90,000 Ford F-150 Lightning versus the combustion-powered Platinum F-150 Lightning. I'm sorry, not Lightning, just F-150.
F-150.
Yeah. $62,000 starting MSRP. That's a $28,000 price difference off the bat. Now, driving 15,000 miles a year, you're going to be looking at a 9.5-year break-even period if you do not qualify for the federal tax credit. If you do, still 7-year break-even period with the F-150 Lightning. Now, I can think of one scenario where it would make way more sense to go for the electric version of the F-150, and that's going to be for fleets or anyone who drives a lot more than 15,000 miles per year. If you use it as a work vehicle, the more you drive, the quicker those fuel savings are going to add up, and you may be looking at a break-even point of 4 to 5 years if you drive a lot more than that. And that could honestly be a compelling case if you plan on keeping your vehicle for a long time.
Do you remember what the data was when it was $4.25? Was it like 11 years to break even? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's actually exactly what it was for the F-150 Lightning. Good guess, Zach. You got these numbers flowing in your head. So it was 11 years, and now it's down to 9.5 years without the tax credit. As gas prices have crept up, or they haven't crept up, they've
skyrocketed up.
Yeah. We've seen the break-even period drop by, in some cases, 2 to 3 years for expensive vehicles.
Looking for a car? Look no further than joinYAA.com. Go check out the cars listed there. There's no BS, no lead gen forms, no anything. Just cars.
Okay, let's look at a Toyota. Obviously, they recently announced and have just started to get the BZ4X on the road. Sad news there with a recent recall that we won't get into in this video. Let's compare that to one of their other popular models, and let's see, like, what's the break even? What's the timeline on that look like?
Yeah. You've got a price difference of about $11,000 between the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid XLE trim and the new BZ4X XLE. So $11,000 difference. The hybrid is honestly a pretty good option. That's why it's one of the best-selling hybrids in the country right now, 40 miles per gallon. The BZ4X, the new electric crossover from Toyota, it gets okay efficiency, but it's very slow charging. The break-even time, this is amazing. This is the effect of the incentives on the economics of buying an electric vehicle. Without incentives, you'd be looking at 8 years to break even because, honestly, this is because the hybrid RAV4 gets such good fuel economy. It's kind of a fuel sipper.
This kind of builds a little bit of a case for why Toyota's strategy is really all in on hybrids, at least at this stage.
Yeah.
But with the incentives,
you're basically subtracting $7,500 from $11,000, and that drops you down to 2.5 year break-even period for the BZ4X. So the case gets a lot stronger with incentives. There's a but. Toyota is almost out of their federal EV tax credits because of the 200,000 sale cap. So if you're looking to save money by going with a Toyota BZ4X, you better scurry on over there and make a reservation, buy one ASAP, because by the end of next year, 2023, Toyota itself expects to be out of the current federal EV tax credit unless there's a revision.
Now, what about Subaru? Obviously, they have a similar platform or the same platform as the BZ4X for the Solterra. What about Subaru? Compare that to... You've got a Forester at home. Why don't we compare it to a Forester?
Yeah. Subaru really priced the Solterra pretty high. Now, it's on a whole different level than the Forester, which is one...
Time out, man. Very high. Like twice the price of the Forester.
Yeah, we're looking at a $20,000 difference between the base Subaru Forester, we're talking 2022 model, and the base Subaru Solterra. The Solterra starts at $46,000. I can't imagine that there could be any dealer markups. Would you, Zach? I mean, there's not dealer markups in 2022, right?
Okay, I'm going to find a screenshot of one, and we're going to put it right there. Like, yes, there's dealer markups on Solterra.
Yeah, so okay range, nothing to write home about at 228 miles of range. It charges very slow. We're talking like 45 minutes to an hour to charge when on a trip. What about the money? Well, with let's just start with incentives, because Subaru still has a long time to go before it reaches the cap for the federal EV tax credit. 6.5 years. That's if you drive 15,000 miles a year and you're able to pay MSRP for your Solterra, no markups. If you end up paying a markup, you're going to have to start adding to that break-even time. Are you willing to keep a 2023 electric vehicle that gets 228 miles of range and charges in about an hour for 7 to 10 years? Do you think you're going to keep this EV a decade from now? Think about that before you go out and buy one of these electric vehicles.
That is some of the consideration here. Like the payback period, honestly, not that bad. 6.5 years. Do I want to still be driving a Subaru Solterra in 6.5 years, especially when there's kind of more future-proofed EVs on the road, kind of like the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Why don't we compare that to a Hyundai Santa Fe?
Yeah. The math is a little bit weird here because the Ioniq 5 is priced pretty high. However, I can say it's a pretty awesome car. I have no regrets. I love the Ioniq 5. It's an amazing spaceship. It's amazing. But there is an $18,000 difference between the price of the Hyundai Santa Fe and the Ioniq 5 SEL trims. So at 15,000 miles a year with federal tax incentives, you'd be looking about 4.5 years to break even. I mean, mostly this is a factor. This is a result of the differences in fuel economy between the Santa Fe and the Ioniq 5. The Santa Fe is not all that fuel efficient, getting an average combined city and highway of about 26 miles per gallon. When you compare that with the really decent efficiency of, 110 miles per gallon with the Ioniq 5, miles per gallon equivalent, you're looking at fuel savings adding up pretty quickly. But before we go, Zach, I really want to talk about a few other factors that can weigh heavily in the break-even point when considering an EV purchase.
I'm all ears.
State incentives and sometimes even local incentives. So for simplicity's sake, all these numbers we've been talking about and all the numbers you can see at our electric vehicle savings guide, they're only considering federal electric vehicle incentives, which is right now the $7,500 tax credit. But there are a few dozen states around the country where you can save between $1,000, sometimes $4,000 more on your EV purchase. Sometimes it's in the form of a sales tax exemption, which can be huge, especially with how expensive these cars are. Sometimes it's in the form of a direct rebate. But check your state incentives, which we've got you covered here at YAA. You can check the link down below. We've seen some state incentives ranging beyond $4,000, and that's on top of the federal tax incentive. So be checking that out. And also miles driven. Don't forget that if you drive less than 15,000 miles per year, it's going to take a lot longer for you to make up the difference, maybe in excess of a decade. That's not good. But if you drive more than 15,000 miles a year, you're a heavy commuter or you travel a lot, you're going to be cutting down the break-even point significantly, sometimes to as little as 2 to 4 years to break even.
Yeah, I mean, these are big considerations for why you should also go on a road trip. You know, I mean, maybe. But Justin, honestly, what's going through my head as you're saying this? We should build a calculator, man. We really should. Like a comparison calculator, put 2 cars in there, how much you drive, like where you live to pull in. Like that would be pretty slick. And I don't know, maybe I just created a bunch of work for folks, but I bet you people would use it. Let us know in the comments below if that's something you do. I think that'd be super helpful. You did a great job queuing up these examples. But yeah, it'd be pretty cool to just compare 2 cars.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on gas prices too, because if the trend continues, I hope it doesn't, break even is going to come a lot sooner than expected.